to all the people who work as scarers in haunted houses. What were some of your best reactions? A friend of mine went to a haunted house and the crazy chainsaw guy at the very end recognized her. They were co-workers at another job, but she didn't recognize him in costume, so when he was just supposed to chase people out of the building, he chased her all the way down the street. It was extra funny because she started to slow down outside the building and then looked back and realized he wasn't stopping before running the rest of the way down the street. It was always the best when you knew someone, or when someone in the group would say a name, and then you'd radio it ahead of you, so that Melissa kept hearing Monster whisper her name. When it worked beautifully. I got one of those really big buff men to let out the highest pitched scream I've ever heard. He almost punched me but stopped himself. I'm trying to imagine that. I have several stories. Done it for years. I was once knocked out. Worked in a house with a scare room where you peek behind blacked out curtains. You're not supposed to lean farther than the windowsill, but sometimes you're just in the moment. A guy turned a corner and was looking at the black light work on the wall and didn't notice me right beside him. I leaned as close as I could to him and just whispered to him. He collapsed to the ground and reached for anything he could grab. Grabbed the back of my head and I slammed my head into the sill. Next thing I know, I'm on the ground of the scare room. A co-worker steps over me and hands me a bottle of ibuprofen. LOL. I was once Nosferatu and scared a guy so bad he tried to clear the corner of rocks and props instead of run around it. He fell and tumbled down the other side, breaking 3 fingers. Another time I was part of a blacklight clown maze. The walls were fence. We kept jumping back and forth on the fences and this woman became so exhausted from screaming she passed out. We had to shut it down for a while until paramedics could arrive and get her out. She was terrified of clowns, so we couldn't be around her when she was waking up. We had to get our management out there for her while we waited outside. Not a professional, but one I did many years ago. The wife and I had a party to go to on Halloween. I had gotten dressed up. A very urbane devil. Red jacket, red tie, black slacks, black silk shirt, red makeup on neck and face, teeth partly blacked out to make fangs, 2 horns sprouting from my forehead, hair slicked back and tinted red. Before we left, we were ready for a few early trick-or-treaters, and I had been handing out candy on the front porch when I saw a father and little girl walking down the sidewalk. She was maybe 6, dressed as a princess. The father was being a good sport, but neither had seen me yet, so I stood perfectly still, the candy bowl in my hands about stomach height, and I waited. The father saw me, and he got the crap-eating grin on his face and told his daughter to go get some candy. He stayed at the bottom of the driveway and she started walking up. Got halfway, actually saw me and stopped dead in her tracks. She looked back and Dad waved her on to go. He looked up at me and winked, so I knew I was covered. She came up, slowly, watching me, but I had the 1,000-yard stare going on, only seeing her out of my peripheral vision. She paused again right in front of me and looked back. Dad called out, "Take a piece, honey." She turned back to me, reached up and carefully took 1 piece of candy from the bowl. She turned back to her dad and yelled, "I did it." I leaned down and growled in a menacing tone, "Take 2. Yeah," she screamed. Dad laughed. She didn't get that second piece. She ran too quick. I did the same thing as a teenager, dressed up to look like a decoration, sitting in a chair with the bowl in my lap. Every time kids would reach in to get candy, I'd jump. One kid told his dad I was a real person. The dad told the kid to stop being a sissy and went to grab the candy himself. It was so satisfying scaring the crap out of him instead, and the kid saying, "I told you." I was walking through a haunted house and there was a skeleton in a wedding dress laying in a casket. A zombie guy in a tuxedo jumped out from behind the wall and screamed, "Don't look at my wife." Me, being the funny try-hard teen I was, responded, "Sorry man, she's just so hot." He replied, "Yeah, she'll give you a real boner." I think about that all the time. Props to that haunted house worker. Freaking son. I was part of a cannibal hillbilly haunted house. My role is to hide near the entrance and jump out with a bloody spade to scare the visitors as they enter the house. I will then call out for my little brother, whom I call Baby. The line goes, "Hey Baba, we got more playthings." One time, a customer was unscathed by my scare and was laughing and mocking me, and when I called out for my baby, He was like, oh no, wow, a baby. Little did they know, baby is a huge guy covered in blood and intestines wearing butcher apron with a pig mask and armed with an axe. The moment the guy mocked me for calling for baby, baby immediately rushed out from a secret door next to him with a creepy childlike laughter. The guy got so scared he stumbled backwards and crashed into our prop haystacks. Former worker. I worked at probably half dozen over the years. I've had a few people pass out and a few yell I just peed my pants etc, which is always funny satisfying, but my favorite one is easily this. I was working in a boiler room scene and dressed as Freddy Krueger. The setup was a large boiler that made you look to your left while I came out behind them on the right side. The door was straight ahead in the direction people were already walking, so they usually walked round towards it. Someone designed the hallway to take a 90-degree left turn as soon as you went through the door, so many people ran into the wall. LOL. Cue 4 or 5 large high school footballers, all in their jerseys, in a single file line looking pretty scared. I jumped out behind the last guy. They all screamed at the top of their lungs, booked it towards the door single file pushing each other, and the first guy went right through the plywood wall. The rest of them piled onto each other at the hole in the wall. I guess all that mass coupled with speed and football strength pushing all at once was too much. I started laughing and so did they. They got up, apologized, and continued down the correct hallway. This made me laugh. Thank you. Not a worker, but when I was kid, like 6 or 7, I went to a haunted house with my dad. While we were walking through, a staff member with a Jason mask and a huge cleaver appears out of nowhere. He bangs his cleaver on a table near my hand and screams at me. I was scared out of my ever-loving mind, but my panic reaction was to ask an adult for help, and since he was the only adult around, I blurted out, in the tiniest kid voice, "Where's the exit?" He growled again, which scared me again, which made me ask again, much louder this time, "Where's the exit?" So he pointed with his cleaver and snarled once more. There was a hint of sadness in his final growl. In hindsight, I think it probably looked to him like he couldn't scare a child. I want to go back in time and let him know it was one of the scariest moments of my life, but my parents had trained me very well. Sorry, Anonymous Jason. I didn't mean to emasculate you. Not a scarer, but my kid once got the whole attraction shut down. A local haunted Halloween place that was a tradition for us to visit every year had a house of horrors. It was the standard old farmhouse turned into a maze of rooms and hallways filled with monsters and creatures, speakers blaring WHOOOOO sounds, fake cobwebs and the whole bit, and of course darker than a coal miner's butthole. You had to be 7 years old to enter, and my youngest daughter had waited for years to get to go when finally she was old enough and so stoked to finally experience what her older sister and friends had promised her was going to be like. Totally awesome. Well, we made it slightly less than halfway through. It was zombie grandma that popped out of a closet that did her in. Kid had lungs like a freediver and used them well that day. She also tore loose from my hand and bolted like a startled deer, disappearing into the murky depths of the building. Everything came to a screeching halt. Staff turned on all the lights, herded all the other visitors outside and helped me look for her. We found her squeezed in behind the vampire's coffin, hands clapped over her ears and eyes tightly shut. I picked her up and she clung to me like an octopus for the rest of the day. She remembers the event clearly but hasn't suffered any lasting mental trauma. She still loves Halloween. Honestly, I think losing a kid in one of these things is far scarier than the thing itself. Used to know a dude I'd rock climb with, and he was working at one of these haunted houses as a jack-in-a-box. So he jumps out one time and this proper muscular, manly dude let out a high-pitched scream and punched him straight in the nose by reflex. He now has a crooked nose. They never have that reflex with bigger scare actors in my experience. It's an excuse, and a bad one. I've never worked at haunted houses, but here's a conversation I overheard near a haunted house, dedicated to all those who got punched for doing their job. Security patrol, don't touch the monsters. The monsters won't touch you. Random kid, what if I punch the monsters? Security patrol, the security will touch you. Ever so tenderly. Hey, I worked as a scarer in NZ. I really liked the place and it was fun to work at. They also made sure that we were always safe and people got kicked out if they didn't follow the rules. My best reaction was from a big guy who dropped backwards on the floor and screamed his lungs out after I did a long short scare. Long short is a scare where you shine a light on yourself from far away and then sneak up to the person and flash yourself again. One of my favorite ones. Ugh. That crap gets to me. I'd be on the floor screaming too. Worked a zombie ship in Tampa. I have a thin hallway that leads outside. I normally jump from a room that is tucked away, but I can kinda do whatever I want. I decided I wanted to have some fun, so I decided to stand in the middle of the hallway with my fake leg in my hand and just start rocking back and forth. I'm a zombie, so I'm supposed to be groaning in agony, but I was completely silent and letting the ambience do my job. My mark rounded the corner and he saw me just rocking there. He turned around and just said nope and ran the other direction. I took this time to slide back into my room and the mark came back and his friends were like, "What's your problem?" "There is nothing here." "He was here. There was somebody here," my target exclaimed. My original mark led the group, so I decided to attack the middle. They all slammed into each other and fell down laughing. It's things like this that make me keep working haunted houses. I'm skipping this year because of the whole COVID thing, but maybe next. I got ton of stories. Good times all around. Well, let's hear some more, cause that one was hilarious. A little kid was on his dad's shoulders and when I was done yelling he said, "Who are you?" and I kid you not, I started laughing. I couldn't stop. His reaction was so calm and honest. Really is a story for the books. TLDR. Little kid is not afraid and makes me laugh. I've actually gotten a similar one in the past, though I was only haunting my parents' front porch for Halloween. That, along with the little boy repeatedly and fearfully insisting "You're not real," will be with me forever. Not a scarer, but I was walking through a haunted house with my friend and her parents and auntie. This was a few years ago when I was about 14. I had literally met this auntie that morning, but she was lovely and friendly, so I thought nothing of it when she held my hand because she was scared of the haunted house. As we are walking through, a guy who works there came round the corner in front of us. He didn't shout boo or anything, literally just walked round the corner while doing his job. This lady absolutely crap herself, screamed so loudly my ears rung and then just ran, leaving me holding myself up on the wall as I cry with laughter. The confused look on this poor bloke's face only made me laugh harder. I managed to continue after about 5 minutes and was still laughing when I reunited with everyone outside the house. Had to explain what happened and why I was so far behind everyone. We laughed about it for the rest of the day. I worked for one for a few seasons. The best reaction I saw, but unfortunately I wasn't the one to cause, was a lady whose legs kept giving out from fear. She kept getting up quickly though, and the rest of the people in her party thought she kept dropping her keys, but she was dropping her whole self. The keys were in her pocket the whole time. Other than that, I just had a lot of edgy kids screaming random things when they got startled. Nothing like popping out at a teenage boy and they just outright scream "Your mom gay" on reflex. I worked at a charity one for a couple of years. There were 2 haunted trains, and a trolley would take you from one to the next. After you left the first one, you had to walk across a field to the trolley. I had a nice dark spot where I could hide, and after a group passed I would crack a chainsaw wide open and chase the fastest person in the group. Once that person reached the safe zone, I would turn around and run at the rest of the group who was now running in my direction. During one of these, I had a teenage girl that slipped, screamed bloody murder, and then puked all over the place. Had to shut it down for a few minutes after that group, and hose down the area. It was beautiful. This one was great. I loved my short time volunteering at a haunted hayride. It was a fun excuse to get into the Halloween spirit and hang out with friends, scare a few people and then go to Dennis at 2 AM while still dressed as zombies. As the point was to scare people, you kind of go for those that have the biggest reaction. Some of the people that scared the easiest had this little circular badge with flashing lights on it, which my friends and I assumed was one of those overpriced, gimmicky light up items you see at pretty much all night events. Some of these people would be scared out of their minds, cowering in the shoulder of whomever they were with. After a few nights of volunteering, my friend and I finally asked someone what those light up badges were for. As it turns out, those badges were purchasable while in line. for like $15, with the purpose of guests lighting it up if they were getting too anxious or frightened while on the ride. This way, the employees would know, hey, this person is probably going to have a panic attack. Go scare someone else. Unfortunately, this was never really conveyed to the volunteers, so my friends and I inadvertently had been targeting the poor people who paid extra at a haunted harried to not be scared. Worked at one haunted house years ago for precisely 2 days. I'll never work another because there is no way that I can ever top this scare, ever. Night 1. I was assigned to the clown room, where we had life-sized statues of some clowns from the movie Killer Clones from Outer Space. I had a mask, clone suit, and chubby 3-fingered gloves, so I blended right in, looking just like one of the statues. I went through the night scaring folks and having a great time. On night 2, a former co-worker whom I had not seen in years showed up with her boyfriend. She squealed and squirmed with displeasure as they entered, saying, "No, no, no, I hate clowns, I hate clowns," as they moved past me. I remained standing still and blending in with the statues, but made eye contact with her and followed her with my eyes. She freaked out and said that one's watching me. Her boyfriend said, "Honey, it's just a statue." She had passed me at this point, but her boyfriend walked up to me to inspect and make sure I was just a statue. I winked at him and slowly brought my finger to my lips in a SSHHH gesture, then pointed up ahead toward his girlfriend. He grinned and nodded, staying back while I snuck up behind my former coworker. I put a comforting arm around her, hoping she would think I was her boyfriend. She did, at least until she reached up to hold my hand and felt my ridiculously oversized fingers. Everything went in slow motion and I could feel her terror kicking in as she realized I was definitely not her boyfriend. I leaned down to look her in the eyes and grumbled, "Hi, Molly." She screamed, "Holy crap, IT knows my Naomi," and ran off into the next room. I told the showrunner that I would not be coming back the next night as I had just completed my mission of permanent psychological damage. Best Halloween ever. Holy crap, that's amazing. I worked at a scare maze and played a little girl in the first room. Obviously a lot of guys came in freaked out because little girls in horror movies are always evil, but the ones that weren't scared would try and hit on me, leave their numbers, ask for my ig, like, "Dude, I'm supposed to be 7. Sure. I'm telling ya, fear turns guys on or something." The one time I decided not to use my scary man voice and use my normal, obviously female voice, as I was threatening a group, some guy said kinky. Totally ruined my mood. I was a haunted house actor for about 6 years and it was some of the best times of my life. My scare was a faulty elevator, really a box on a pulley that mimicked a falling elevator, so I heard many more scares than I saw in person. Few things are as satisfying as hearing a big burly guy shriek like a 9-year-old girl once the special effects kick in. At the end of the attraction, a man, really the nicest guy in the world, but he looks like a crazed redneck, chased people out with a chainsaw. I remember one guy didn't stop running until he was across the parking lot and in the bed of a pickup truck. It was so much fun. I really miss working there. This was a student event, so not an actual job. I was just helping run it, but basically I had this great costume that had a black veil over the front of a hood, which meant no one could see my face, and so I stood very still in slightly awkward positions, lulling people into thinking I was a statue. I'd bide my time. 2. A few of the students would nervously prod me and I'd wobble like a statue but do nothing else. Then every so often, usually with someone coming in after a prodding one, I'd leap at them and go rag. The best response, which I still feel guilty about, was this Chinese girl who literally fell onto her butt in shock and started bawling her eyes out. Such was the fright I gave her. I used to stand at the beginning of the house and just slowly crawl up the wall onto the ceiling while maintaining eye contact. On the ceiling I would chase people and crawl ahead of them into another hole in the ceiling. I would crawl along into another room they were in and just do one of those creepy, annoying "you're gonna die" clown laughs and jump down in front of them and lurch forward. I had this really big muscular guy scream once who punched the wind out of me and run away crying. I found out by the chainsaw clown at the end of the maze that the dude had wept himself before he had reached that section. They escorted the guy out through an employee section so the guy could quietly get to the parking lot. Not me, but I had a good friend who worked at a haunted house some years back, and a 15-year-old girl straight up kicked him in the nuts. He fell, complained, chased after her apparently to get her kicked out or something, and then it turned into this big thing. I only heard his side of the story, and he is a bit of an idiot. A lovable one, but still an idiot. Lovable idiots are the best. I was the setup guy and my friend was the scare guy. Most satisfying was probably getting an old teacher of ours to jump, but the best reaction was probably this teenage girl who jumped into the wall. We also made some tiny children cry and felt a bit bad about that. I'm not an employee but was on the other end of it when I was 5 or 6. At the end of the haunted house, you walk down an exit ramp area. There was an employee exit and a regular exit for everyone else. My dad, brother and myself were leaving when the largest man my 5-year-old self had ever seen came out of the employee exit, started a chainsaw and waved it at me. I immediately sprinted out the exit, through the fun graveyard, knocking over a mummy and dodging the zombies that were trying to stop me out of concern. I found my mom and didn't leave her side the rest of the night. It's still remembered as one of our great family stories. Wholesome part. The butcher actually turned off his chainsaw and apologized to my dad profusely. He didn't see me and was trying to scare him and my older brother. My dad was totally cool with it since I had begged him to let me go into the 13+ house with him. This was back in 1999 when most parents weren't buttholes about everything. TLDR. Chainsaws are scary and will make a 5-year-old run like Forrest Gump. I think I'd run away from a chainsaw that someone suddenly started near me and I'm a grown butt adult of 40. I don't like loud noises. I worked as a pirate guide in a pirate zombie themed haunted house at a water park when I was 14. Dang, that was a heck of a sentence. I would let my victims through the haunted house, lose them in the dark and deliver jump scares every chance I got, usually screaming ahoy or aei in varying tones from booming to splitting high-pitched prepubescent screams. Towards the end of the haunted house was a pneumatic cannon that would make the craziest, loudest sound you've ever heard. One group I took through was all 21+-year-olds. As soon as they walked in they were already bragging about how lame the other attractions were and how cool and not scared they were. Naturally I decided to scare the ever-living bejesus out of them by hiding behind a wall and popping out of it and screaming. The bravest of the braggers immediately fell on her butt into the fetal position and everyone was screaming bloody murder. Then as I led them through the rest of my ship, I managed to pull off 5 more jump scares in a few minutes, each time that one girl having the same hilarious fight or flight response of immediately falling on her butt each time. I kept doing more scares to see if she would keep having the same reaction and she got really pissed. Her big boyfriend confronted little teenage me and started threatening me, so using my pirate accent the whole time I apologized to my frightened matties and promised I wouldn't scare them again. 1 second later I pulled the string for the cannon and they all crapped their pants screaming. Screamed laughing my head off. I chased them through the dark and out the exit. The boyfriend sounds like a really big douche for threatening a 14-year-old. I wasn't the scarer, but I'm sure I gave the scarer a funny story. When I was in high school a family nearby did a yearly haunted trail in their woods. It was pretty well done and had tons of scarers hiding in trees, in brush, crawling out of hidden holes in the ground, etc. It didn't open until after dark, so the majority of the trail was just lit by the occasional electric candle leading the way. Near the end of the trail a guy with a chainsaw would jump out and chase groups to the exit. All good fun and I went with a group of friends every year. On this particular occasion I went with about 6 people. We were all making our way through the trail when the chainsaw guy jumped out and started chasing us. He obviously saw that we were punk teenagers and really sprinted to get us, even buzzing the backs of our legs with the chainless chainsaw. I was running as fast as I could and keeping up with the pack. Then, my foot sunk into the forest floor. Apparently the owners had put down those mattress pad egg crate things to scare people who couldn't see what they were sinking into. I completely wiped out, rolling feet over head full speed into some brush alongside the trail. I remember seeing my friends continue to sprint away as I rolled to a stop. The chainsaw guy ran up and stood over me. I looked down the trail after my friends and then back up at him. I whispered, "I can't believe they left me." He laughed and revved the chainsaw. I got up and didn't even try to run from him, just walked defeatedly out of the trail. Hopefully he got a kick out of my epic wipeout, and also me feeling so betrayed I couldn't even be scared anymore. Literal booby traps sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.